With appropriate illustrations and explanations, use the concept of marginal revenue product to explain how, all else equal, the demand for labor of competitive market differs from monopoly. So we know that the demand for labor in the short run essentially is going to be equal to marginal revenue product of labor. And the marginal revenue product of labor is equal to the marginal productivity of labor times the marginal revenue. Now for a competitive market, because the marginal revenue equals the price of the product in a competitive market, we can say the demand for labor is marginal revenue product, which is the marginal product of labor times the competitive price. So we can illustrate. We've got a demand curve that slopes down. Now this is for the product market, so we don't get confused with the labor market. And in a competitive market, we'll have an upward sloping supply curve. And so the competitive market, this is going to be the competitive quantity, and this will be the competitive price. Now for a monopoly, the monopolist has a marginal revenue curve that lies below the demand curve, and the supply curve is the marginal cost curve if this was a monopoly. So that means that the monopolist quantity is here, QM, because firms are trying to maximize their profits. They do that where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Go up to the demand curve, and this is the monopolist price. Now, relevant to here, we want to know what is the marginal revenue. And the marginal revenue at the monopolist quantity is right here. So marginal revenue M for monopoly. And so the monopolists, the marginal revenue for monopoly is less than the competitive price. And so if we're making a comparison between the demand for labor for a competitive market and the demand for labor for a monopoly, then the demand for labor for a monopoly is going to be less. Now, this makes perfect sense because if we look here, the competitive market quantity is much greater than the monopolist quantity. And then if ultimately the industry is producing more, it's going to need more labor. So that sort of confirms one way looking at the quantity that's being produced, needing more labor. The other way that we asked in this question is to look at the difference between the marginal revenue product for a monopoly and a competitive market.